The biggest intimacy killer in most relationships isn't incompatibility. It's actually secrecy. Most couples spend years hoping that their partner will somehow magically know what they like, what turns them on, what excites them, and what helps them feel desired, and what might create a passion in their sex life. And if you never learn how to talk openly about sex and about your desire, you'll eventually find yourself feeling really lonely, very disconnected, and sexually frustrated, and really unseen in the very relationship that's supposed to know you the best. I'm Jenn Pinkerton, and I'm a psychotherapist and a connection expert. I help individuals and couples learn how to uncover patterns and to stop repeating the same painful behaviors, to start building healthier, more connected relationships where they can truly thrive. Now, in our last video, we talked about how emotional intimacy creates this foundation and beginning for great physical intimacy. We explored why connection, friendship, vulnerability, and emotional closeness are often the very bridge that's needed to a healthier sex life. But eventually, every relationship reaches this other level of intimacy. And that level is where you stop asking, do we love each other? And instead, you start asking, do we really know each other? And sometimes with sex, that's the place we don't know each other. Because loving someone and knowing someone are truly not the same thing. Most couples can spend years sharing a home, sharing a life, raising children, paying bills, creating this beautiful, rich feeling of togetherness, and they manage responsibilities together while never having honest conversations about desire. Not because they don't love each other, and not even because they don't want each other, but because they're afraid of being judged, afraid of being misunderstood, and afraid of hurting their partner's feelings. And so we tiptoe and we dance around it. We don't want to sound strange. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be judged. And we certainly don't want to be shamed. And so we're afraid that what we want might mean something's wrong with us. And maybe our partner will be unhappy with that. And so everything gets lost in that. So we have this fear. But the thing is, healthy sexuality isn't about perfection. It is about discovery and curiosity and learning yourself and learning your partner over and over again throughout the lifespan of a relationship. Because everybody keeps growing. And the person you fell in love with 10 years ago isn't the same person sitting across from you now. They're older, they're wiser, they're more experienced in some ways. They've had new life experiences, new challenges, new disappointments, growth, and new insecurities, new victories, new stresses. All of this combined together also bleeds into new fantasies and new needs. And the healthiest couples don't assume that they already know everything there is to know about each other. They remain curious. They continue this level of interest and learning, and they want to continue asking questions. They want to continue exploring and discovering. And that absolutely applies to intimacy just as much as it applies to every single other part of a relationship. So what I want to talk about today is how to safely and confidently share your desires, your fantasies, your needs, your curiosities, and turn-ons with your partner in a way that creates more of a connection instead of more of a distance. Because one of the loneliest experiences in a relationship is wanting something that you don't feel safe enough to talk about, especially if so much of the relationship is amazing with that. And one of the most powerful experiences in a relationship is to realize that you no longer have to hide. So I worked with a couple recently who had been married for more than 20 years. And they had this beautiful life together. They genuinely loved each other. And they loved spending time together. They were even best friends. They chose to be together doing everything. And they had built this incredible life. Yet both of them described feeling very disconnected sexually. Sex was a problem. And it was boring, and it wasn't often. And when they had it, it was just kind of checking the box. And so we worked to try to uncover what was some major relational issue. But instead, I found that it was something very simple. It was really silence. It was neither one of them had ever honestly talked about what they wanted. And, maybe when they were first dating, but certainly not in years. And it wasn't because they didn't trust each other or because they didn't care. It's because they assumed they already knew each other. They already knew what each other liked. And assumed he knew what his wife liked. That had pleased her before. Why wouldn't it please her now? The wife assumed she knew what her husband wanted. It was really simple. You do this, you do that, and we're good. But both of them were wrong because over the years, their desires had evolved. Their interest had evolved. Their fantasies had actually evolved. And their preferences had changed too. But the conversation stayed frozen in time. And so what struck me most while working with them was how relieved they both felt once they finally started talking. Once we got past that and we broke the ice, it wasn't because they suddenly agreed on everything, because not every fantasy can ever become a reality, but because they no longer felt alone. They no longer felt this barrier to intimacy, this wall between them, and they didn't have to hide themselves anymore. That's the purpose of these deeper conversations. The goal isn't perfect agreement. The goal is deeper understanding, because intimacy grows when honesty replaces secrecy. And that's where I want to start right now. So lesson 1 I want to give you is that desire is something you can continue discovering. So a big myth about long-term relationships is that once you've been together for long enough, you should just have sex all figured out. But many couples unconsciously operate as if intimacy should just eventually become, automatic. It's the status quo. This is what we do. And they assume that because they know their partner well, then they know that everything with sex is great. And they know everything there is to know about their desires and preferences and turn-ons and needs. But I promise you, you don't know, because healthy sexuality doesn't work that way. Human beings evolve, bodies evolve, hormones evolve, stress levels evolve, and life circumstances evolve. So the person you were sexually at 25 is absolutely not the same person that you are at 45 or 50 or 55. And this is one of the reasons that even someone whom I respect so much, Emily Nagoski, in her book and her work as Come As You Are, has become so influential. She teaches that desire is highly contextual. Desire isn't something that simply exists or doesn't exist. It responds to what is happening in your world, in your life. It responds to the stress you're experiencing or how exhausted you are. It responds to your self-confidence and the level of how good you feel. It responds to emotional connection, and it absolutely responds to novelty. It responds to how safe and playful, relaxed, energized, and alive you feel. So people spend years wondering why their desire changed, and when the reality is that their entire life has changed. I mean, look back and think about how much different your life is now than it was before. Do you have children now? Do you have different careers, aging parents? Financially, you're probably in a different place. Hormonally, all women get to a different place. And these conditions that once supported desire may no longer exist. The healthiest couples understand that intimacy requires updating that conversation. So instead of assuming, we already know each other. I know what they like. They know what I like. Stay curious. Ask questions. These couples can continue into learning. They can continue in discovering. They can continue becoming students of each other. And that's hot. What helps you feel desired now? What helps you feel connected now? What turns you on now? What helps you relax now? And then basically, what creates excitement overall for you now? Those conversations really matter because desire is not static. One of the biggest reasons that couples lose intimacy isn't because attraction disappears. It's not gone. It's because the curiosity is what is gone. And that disappeared because you just stop asking questions. You stop exploring, you stop learning. And sometimes people feel an insecurity about something changing, And when curiosity dies, then that intimacy follows. But there's something profoundly attractive and sexy about being genuinely interested in your partner. Like, not just interested in what they do, not interested in about their day, but who are you becoming? How are you growing? And because intimacy is not a destination, it is a lifelong process of discovery in the most deepest, passionate way. And the strongest couples never stop discovering each other. Now, before we move on, if you're listening to this and you're realizing that maybe your relationship has, drifted into a different place right now, or autopilot maybe, or maybe you're recognizing your sex has become the same old, same old. And maybe there's even some areas where you see connection is missing, or communication, or desire has started slipping. I want to give you a tool that can help. So I have created the Pinkerton Relational Health Index, and this is a quiz that's available to you, and it's a comprehensive relationship assessment. And I created this and developed this to help individuals and couples identify where they are. What are your strengths, your blind spots, and growth opportunities, areas that you can work with, areas you can work with me with. And this is across multiple dimensions of relational health. So it looks at things like emotional connection, intimacy, which we're talking about today, communication, conflict resolution, vulnerability, trust, attachment patterns, emotional safety, finances, defensiveness, grandiosity. Many of these little dynamics that can just really create a wedge. And I talk about this on this channel all the time because most couples don't just have one problem. They've got patterns. And until you understand the patterns, it's very difficult to create lasting change. So the PRHI can help you identify exactly where your relationship is thriving and where it might need a little bit more intentional attention. So because many people think that they have a sex problem, when what they actually have is a communication problem because you're not talking about sex, and a resentment problem, or maybe also an emotional disconnection one at that. If you work and look on this PRHI, it's going to help you identify what patterns may actually be driving all of that, might be driving the struggles that you're experiencing. So you can download it for free using the link below. Now let's keep going because the next part that I'm going to talk about, the next piece of this conversation is where things start to get really interesting. So lesson 2 here, there is no shame in your game. There's no shame in preference. And one of the most freeing concepts that I teach everyone I work with is that desire is not a moral issue. It's merely information. It's data. There's nothing inherently wrong with having preferences. There's nothing inherently wrong with fantasies. There's absolutely nothing wrong with curiosity. You are 2 consenting adults, and there's nothing wrong with discovering what creates excitement and anticipation, novelty, adventure, romance, connection, or pleasure for you. Yet this is where so many couples get stuck. And this is the trap. This is the quicksand because they carry shame about what they enjoy. They judge themselves and oh boy, they're going to judge you. They question themselves. They wonder whether something is wrong with them. And gosh, if you like that, maybe something's wrong with you. They hear their partner share a fantasy and immediately become insecure and threatened and jealous or defensive. But as a therapist, I often tell couples desire it's much more like preference than morality. If one person loves to go get sushi and another one loves and craves Mexican food, neither person is wrong. They're just different. We don't shame people for liking different kind of foods. We don't accuse someone of betrayal because they simply decided that now, never before, they love to go eat Indian food. We simply recognize that human beings have preferences and those change and evolve. And desire works much of the same way. Many fantasies are not even about the act themselves. They're about an emotional experience. They're about what it can mean to them. Because a fantasy may represent feeling desired. It may represent feeling pursued or chosen, feeling adventurous, feeling dominated, feeling submissive, feeling playful, feeling free, feeling powerful, feeling cherished, and feeling wanted. So when couples immediately move into judgment, they're going to miss this beautiful opportunity to understand what their partner is actually longing for. One of the healthiest things you can do when your partner shares a fantasy or an interest or a preference is to immediately become curious. I want you to lean in to say, tell me more. I'm so glad you're telling me about this. Like, what feels exciting? What does that represent to you? And what feeling are you looking for? Because remember, intimacy grows when people feel understood, not when they feel judged. Another important point is that hearing a fantasy does not obligate you to participate in it. This is also where there's some stuckness. This is where emotional maturity also becomes really important. You can be curious about things without agreeing. You can understand it without participating. You can appreciate your partner's honesty and sharing and vulnerability while still maintaining your own boundaries. Healthy sexuality requires both openness and boundaries. The goal isn't to do everything that your partner wants. The goal isn't to immediately say, I'm all in. It's to understand each other. And when shame decreases, then intimacy increases, even if you never do the thing they want. So lesson 3, desire thrives in aliveness. And this concept comes from Esther Perel, and she talks about erotic intelligence and aliveness. And oh, I love that word when we talk about sex, because when people tell me they want more passion or chemistry or excitement in their relationship, they're really often describing this something much deeper. And they're describing a desire to feel more alive, more present, more energized, more full of vitality, more playfulness, more curiosity, more adventurous. We become more connected to ourselves. And if you're a woman, it's connecting to that femininity or to masculinity. It's to remember, what is it that gets you going and who are you? And you can create that, because desire is often something we cultivate just within ourselves. And one of the greatest challenges of adulthood is that people slowly disconnect completely from their erotic self. It seems just the opposite, but it's true, because you become workers, parents, caregivers, problem solvers, project managers, financial planners, household managers. You become incredibly competent adults, but there's no playfulness. There's no joy. There's no experiential-ness. There's no sensuality or flirtation. They stop feeling connected to their own body and their own sexuality. And some don't even like their bodies. And over time, life becomes about that instead of an experience, instead of knowing that we are meant to feel desire and pleasure. We're supposed to have play, not just productivity. And we're supposed to be curious about where our desire went, because it doesn't thrive in survival mode. Desire thrives in aliveness. So think about a period in your life when you felt most attractive, most confident, most energized, passionate, and vibrant. It wasn't necessarily just because your relationship was good or perfect. It was actually often because you felt connected to yourself. You felt engaged with life. You felt this sense of energy. You were excited and curious, and you felt fully present. People are often attracted to aliveness. They're attracted to that energy. And of course, they're attracted to confidence and passion and curiosity. They want someone who is fully engaged in their own life. And this is one of the reasons many couples accidentally lose their erotic energy over time, because they stop investing in experiences that challenge that make them feel alive. They stop traveling together. Hotel room sex is a real thing. They stop dancing. They stop laughing. They stop trying new things. There's zero sense of adventure. They stop exploring. They stop creating memories, and they stop challenging themselves. Life becomes repetitive. Groundhog Day every day. Predictable, efficient, safe. And while attachment often loves safety, eroticism frequently needs something more. And this is where we talk about the tension between attachment and desire, because attachment does want security. Healthy attachment seeks predictability. Healthy attachment seeks comfort, but desire often seeks something very different. It wants everything new. Desire seeks anticipation and mystery, and desire often seeks exploration. This is often why sometimes people step outside of their relationship to feel that sense of aliveness in themselves and in someone else. And couples can get really stuck. You might have built a wonderful attachment relationship. You might be best friends. You might be loyal, committed, and dependable, but you stopped cultivating your entire erotic relationship. And these couples, they've stopped seeing each other as lovers. They're just roommates. Or they've stopped creating opportunities for discovery. They may have sex, but it's what we call clinically good enough sex. There's nothing hot. There's nothing passionate. There's no anticipation. There's no excitement. And when they wonder where that spark went, well, the spark didn't disappear. It just stopped being fed. And you can feed it. Erotic energy requires oxygen. It needs that curiosity. It requires imagination. It requires playfulness. And it requires allowing yourself to continue to become an interesting and vibrant person. And one of the healthiest things you can do for your sex life is to maintain your own sense of self, your own relationship with who you are and your sexual energy. That doesn't mean consistently thinking about sex all the time at all. It just means remaining connected to pleasure, to joy. How else do you fill your life with joy and pleasure? How else do you have a sense of playfulness? Connect to the parts of yourself that feel fully alive. What makes you happy you've stopped doing? Is it painting? Is it dancing? Is it music? Connect to your own erotic energy, your creative energy, to bring that into your relationship. And the strongest intimate relationships are not created by two people waiting for desire to magically appear. They're created by two people who intentionally choose to cultivate aliveness and to bring this energy back in the relationship together. And that leads directly into something many couples also stop doing far too soon. They stop flirting. So that brings me to lesson 4. Many couples stop flirting because they assume attraction should be understood. But attraction needs expression. People need to feel desired. People need to feel chosen. And people need to feel pursued. One of the healthiest things that couples can do is to continue dating each other. And I know you've heard this, everybody talks about it, but I don't just mean another dinner reservation. I'm talking about dating that is novel, that creates opportunities for pursuit, that says, I want to ask you out. I want to take you out. I want to flirt with you. Let's do something fun and different. Let's recapture something that's exciting and get out of each other's just responsibilities, out of just the parenting with each other and outside of stress. Dating each other allows people to reconnect as lovers. And lovers flirt. Lovers pursue. Lovers create teasing and tension. Lovers create anticipation. And lovers will maintain curiosity. So that's why flirtation isn't immature. It's actually essential. How often do you flirt with your partner? Because attraction often grows in anticipation, not just availability. So this next lesson might be my favorite one, because I'm going to talk about yuck and yum, yes, no, and maybe some fantasy exploration and boundaries, and how couples are creating a sexual growth mindset. So let's think about exploring and not assuming. One of my favorite exercises with couples is what I call the yes, no, maybe. It's a yuck and yum list. And the purpose of this list isn't about pressure. The purpose isn't about persuading each other to do something. And it's not about convincing your partner to do all the things that they don't want to do and you do. The purpose is discovery. And what consistently surprises me is how many couples have never actually even discussed their preferences in a meaningful and intentional way. They've maybe been having sex for years, sometimes like decades, yet they've never had a real conversation about what they enjoy and what they don't enjoy, what they're curious about, what they, might want to understand what something's all about, what they've always wanted to try but never did, what feels exciting and what feels uncomfortable, what helps them feel desired and what absolutely does not, what helps them feel connected, what helps them feel playful and adventurous. Instead, couples just operate almost entirely on assumptions. I just assume you want this. You've always liked it. You acted like it pleased you, so I kept doing it. I just assumed that worked for you, so I never did anything different. And assumptions just prevent growth. They prevent this curiosity I will keep pounding about. In the healthiest intimate relationships, they maintain this sexual growth mindset. They want to level up. They understand that sexuality is not fixed. It's evolving. And especially if you're empty nesters and your life is changing, let's change with that. It's expanding. And just like we're going to continue growing emotionally and intellectually, spiritually, financially throughout our lives, we also want to continue growing sexually. And one of the reasons exercises like my yes, no, maybe, this yuck and yum list are so valuable is because they create a structured approach and this structured way to have a conversation around sex. And couples began exploring things that they have never discussed before and maybe never done before either. Different styles of flirtation, different styles of initiation, different forms of sex and touch, and different ways to be turned on. there's also some romance into it. There's also some idea of role play into it. And this kind of fantasy and this different kind of exploration also creates anticipation. The goal isn't that every person is going to get all their needs met. It's not that every curiosity is going to become the reality. The goal is understanding. The goal is honesty. The goal is discovery. And I want you to create a relationship where both of you feel safe enough to tell the truth about who you are, tell the truth about what you want. Because when couples stop talking about desire, the desire starts shrinking or it goes elsewhere. And when couples start talking about desire, then desire often can then start expanding and getting bigger and a hell of a lot more fun. One of the things I also told couples is that fantasy and reality are not the same thing. A fantasy can simply be something that is interesting to think about, that they've always wanted to explore, something exciting to discuss, something that creates energy and arousal and playfulness. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it. Not every fantasy is a request, and not every curiosity is a demand. It's just think about this as an interest that we're going to explore and talk about. It doesn't have to become a plan of action, because part of being an emotionally mature adult is to be able to talk about something and discuss it without immediately assuming that it's going to happen or it has to happen. And healthy couples learn to hold that curiosity and to hold boundaries and honor those simultaneously. You can have limits. You can have preferences. You can absolutely decide that something isn't for you. You can even decide that something is just a maybe for you. Not now, maybe, you don't know. In fact, boundaries are one of the things that make exploration possible, because healthy exploration only occurs when both people know that their autonomy and sense of agency is respected. They are still empowered. And the strongest intimate relationships are not relationships without boundaries. They're relationships where honesty and transparency and boundaries all coexist. This is where role play, fantasy, exploration, dirty talk, erotic communication can become powerful tools for connection. And you'd be surprised what this does for how you feel about each other and how you feel about even respecting each other. Because everybody should be able to talk. Everybody should feel heard. It's a fundamental need. And everybody wants imagination and novelty and stepping outside of the routine, out of Groundhog Day. Because one of the big threats in a long-term relationship about desire is predictability. Not the predictability in commitment, but the predictability in eroticism. When every interaction becomes identical, excitement wanes or disappears completely. Novelty doesn't always require doing something dramatic or changing something every single time, but it's simply having a new conversation, talking about it, flirting in a different way, thinking about things in a different way, sharing something you've never shared, even talking about how something in a moment, in a second, was really arousing to you that maybe you would never normally share. It's creating all of it differently, creating anticipation differently. Because many couples mistakenly believe that maintaining passion requires this massive change, but often it requires a small shift of communication repeated consistently. More communication, more curiosity, more flirtation, more dating, more playfulness, more intentionality, and more willingness to learn. What I do also deeply love about the strongest couples that I work with is that they never stop being students of each other. 20 years in, 30 years in, 40 years in, they are still students. They're still asking questions. How many questions have you asked your partner? Do you still discover? Do you still explore? Do you still surprise each other? Because understanding that important aspect, that the goal is not, the goal of intimacy is not just arriving at this place of complete certainty. It's to remain engaged in the process of discovery, that journey, not just the destination. And that's what keeps intimacy alive. So when you strip all this down, the real goal isn't actually better sex. The real goal is deeper connection, because the healthiest sex lives are not built by people who have it all figured out. They're built by people who remain curious. They're built by people who keep trying, who keep learning, people who keep flirting, people who keep this sense of exploration and aliveness, people who keep talking, people who keep discovering new things about themselves and each other. And intimacy doesn't grow through mind reading. We're not psychics. We're not magicians. It grows through the revelation of sharing, through curiosity, through courage. And it takes courage to be honest. It takes courage to take a risk, but this is the person you should take a risk for. Because the goal isn't about finding someone who already knows everything about you. The goal is to find someone to share your life with who wants to keep discovering you again and again and again. So if you found this video helpful today, you will probably really love my next video, because we're going to keep tackling this conversation. This one is going to be the most painful experience that sometimes people feel, which is sexual rejection. What does that mean? Because for most people, sexual rejection isn't just about sex. It activates a very deep fear like, am I attractive enough? Am I still wanted? Am I desirable? Am I being picked? And when couples don't know how to navigate rejection in a healthy way, they often create pressure, and they definitely create resentment and some emotional distance, which of course then is disconnection. And all that can be done in a second. So in that next video, I'm going to show you how to handle that sexual rejection without damaging connection, without affecting your relationship, and how to talk about desire without creating pressure, and how to create an environment where foreplay also doesn't just start in the bedroom. It starts all day long. Because the couples with the strongest intimate connection and intimate relationship understand something. They know that great sex doesn't begin at night. It begins in how you treat each other throughout the day. So click here and watch that one next.